Your Worship, it is now 6:30 p.m.
Okay, we will call it to order then. If you're good to go, Mr. Knopper.
Good to go.
Perfect. So this is the special council meeting on Wednesday, January 12th. And we are doing this via Zoom due to COVID-19 restrictions. And I note that it will be streaming live via Facebook, as well as the town is doing a new conference system that Mr. Knopper was nice enough to hook up for us. And there'll be more information for those of you in the future that would like to join in on that via the town's Facebook page, or you could contact Town Hall. So at this time, we're going to get right into the agenda. And the first thing that we'll do is do a recording of attendance. So I see Deputy Mayor Akaji, Councillor Hurdle, I see Councillor Heenan, and I think that's it right now. I would be surprised if a couple more come, but we do have quorum. So I'll be looking for a mover to approve the agenda. So at this time, we're going to get right into the agenda. Look for a seconder. Councillor Heenan. All those in favor of the agenda, please signify by saying aye. It is everybody that has been approved. I'm looking for disclosure of conflict of interest. We all use power, but I don't see any tonight. So we'll get right into it. And the purpose of tonight is to have, I guess, an engagement session. It's going to be a presentation, but there'll be a motion coming before council in regards to the relicensing of the LaPro nuclear facility. Myself, I've had the opportunity to attend a couple presentations, one through a group of mayors and also the other through the Regional Service Commission. But I really wanted council to have an opportunity to see this presentation, as you guys will be the ones voting on the motion. So Bob Scott, Kathleen Duguay, and Mary O'Neill are all on the agenda as far as presenting tonight. So I'll pass it over to them, and then we'll have a question session for council and then a brief discussion on next steps at the end. So I note that if I get into individuals that are on there, I don't think it's actually Bob himself presenting. I think it's Jason, if I recall, who I saw from a previous one. Well, welcome, Jason.
Great, thank you. I really appreciate you allowing the time here for us to provide this presentation, and I know you've seen it before, but it is important to us from a license renewal point of view, and community engagement and our social license is really of utmost importance to us. So really, we really do appreciate your time. I know you have other important things to do, so to squeeze us in is much appreciated. So if we could jump right into the presentation, that'd be great. Paul, I think you said you have a presentation. You could share your screen.
Yep, just give me 1 second here, Jason. I'll get it all set up here.
And then, I'll go through the presentation once it's on the screen. Feel free to stop me at any time if you'd prefer and ask questions, or we can save them to the end. And, I really am hoping it's not just a one-way dialogue. I'll be talking here for the next 15 minutes or so, but really the intent is to have a bit of a discussion, right? So we can do that during. If you just feel free to stop me, or at the end we can get into any questions and answers.
Jason, just before we start, council, can you see the presentation?
I can, yeah.
Okay, hold on. I'm just going to go to full screen here. So slideshow. Sorry, council, give me 1 second. I'm seeing the setup here. Council, just give me 1 second. I'm just going to have to fix the share screen. Council, can you see the presentation? Full screen? Thank you. Jason, go ahead.
Great, thank you. Okay, so let's go to the next slide. So Kathleen Duguay and myself are giving this presentation. Also, we have Bob, Scott, and Mary on as well, right? So we appreciate your time, and we'll go to the next slide. I guess maybe before we go, I'll just introduce myself a little bit. I'm the Director of Regulatory and External Affairs, which includes all of our licensing aspects at Point LaPro. I've been at Point LaPro almost 25 years, and spent the first half of that in engineering, and then moved through a few special projects, and then to regulatory affairs for the last 5 years. All right, next slide. So the outline of our presentation is very basic. We're going to cover a little bit about Point LaPro in general, and then specifically around license renewal, and hopefully cover some key aspects that would be interesting to you all. Next slide. Okay, station overview. This is actually a picture of our turbine building. For those of you who've been at the station may recognize that. And for those who haven't, we appreciate you coming to visit us sometime, maybe when it's more COVID-friendly times. Next slide. So I'll go through these a little bit quick. I assume that you may know some of these details, but Point LaPro is a can-do design, which stands for Canadian Deuterium. We do believe that it's the foundation of our provincial power supply. Typically provides more than 1/3 of New Brunswick in-province energy. As a note in the third bullet there, during the second fiscal quarter, we represent 63% of the total net generation from all MB power stations. And the reason we want to highlight this is we want to always emphasize and make sure it doesn't go unrecognized that we are proud of what we do, but we understand the significant contribution that we make to the province, and also the responsibility that comes with that. Next slide. One of the key aspects of any station, and certainly for Point LaPro, is qualified and competent staff. And this is a picture of two of our members actually from the operations department. And it's always very important for us to maintain safety. And one of the key aspects of maintaining safety is having highly skilled and trained employees, of which we have approximately 900 of them. This comes with a large investment and a continuous training program where we use an on-site full-scale control room simulator. So for those of you who haven't seen that, we actually have a training control room that looks identical to our actual control room in the station. And if you're in the simulator, you wouldn't know whether you're in the control room or not. They're identical. They look the same. They have all the same lights and buttons and functionality. And we use that to train all of our control room and certified staff on every aspect of the station, and make sure that we can run actual live time drills to make sure that the skills and qualifications are always on par with world's best. In addition to that, we also have a fueling full-scale simulator, and we have mechanical instrumentation labs, and we also use tabletops and other various forms of training. All of this to ensure that at all times we have a highly skilled, highly competent, and qualified workforce to make sure that we're maintaining safety every day. Next slide. Partnership and training is one aspect that I guess extends from having certified staff. And in this particular slide, we have a picture of one of our nuclear response force members at site. So we have a full-time on-site security force. They man the station 24/7. And as you can imagine, with a nuclear response force, and you'll see in that picture they're carrying a machine gun, among other equipment, that training qualification is of utmost importance to ensure safety at all times. But it's not just the training of the staff that's important to us, it's the partnerships that we have with some of the external agencies like the RCMP and St. John Police Force and Canadian Forces that you see on the slide, that not only help us make sure that we have the best world-class qualifications and training, but also help us to integrate our response with them. And as you can imagine, we would rely on external support if there was a major event at Point LaPro. So that partnership is very important to us, both from a training and a preparedness point of view. Next slide. In addition to the security force, we also have a full-time emergency response team that is stationed at the station 24/7. We have a crew of about 9 that are available to respond at any time. That includes a few fire trucks and a fire hall. And again, similar to security, these, in our opinion, are very highly trained professionals. They're trained for hazmat, chemical response. They're trained for personal health issues as well, in addition to their primary role of firefighting. But again, we don't look just within Point LaPro for these skills and qualifications. We really rely on the experts outside of Point LaPro to help us with our training and with our response. And two of the primary ones are the Musquash Fire Department and St. John Fire Department. And to help this relationship, which we really think is a healthy relationship, we do conduct joint drills routinely. Once per year, we have an on-site full-scale drill where we have both of those organizations involved in a major event. But week after week, we have smaller events and engagement opportunities for us to make sure that at all times, we're keeping our skills up with world's best, and also that the response and the collaboration that has to happen in the event of response is always ready to go. Next slide. Emergency preparedness. So this is something that's a daily part of our life, as that line says, and it's something that, as a nuclear station, you know, we always plan and we do our very best to maintain safety, and we are confident in our ability to run the station. We're confident in the reliability of the station, but we always have to be prepared for the worst case scenario. Even if it's very, very, very unlikely to ever happen, we still need to be prepared. So we do put a lot of effort in emergency preparedness at the station, evaluating any event that's possible, even if it's remotely possible, and making sure that we have safeguards and mitigation actions in place should that worst case event or highly unlikely event ever take place. And we do practice our actions that we would take and make sure that any equipment that we're relying on is always ready to go. Next slide. Part of the, I guess, the tenet of nuclear stations around the world is continuous improvement. It's sort of ingrained into our culture that we always want to do better. And there's a few aspects that really help us in this one. One is the World Association of Nuclear Operators, which I'm sure you've heard of. And that's basically a collaboration of all stations within the world to make sure that the highest standards are maintained at all times, and that experts from all the world can share their experience and share their oversight and actually give very intrusive and specific feedback on areas that need to be improved. In addition to that, though, we actually have a license issued by the federal organization, the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, and the picture on the slide is 2 of those inspectors. And we actually have on site between 5 and 7 full-time CNSC inspectors all the time, providing audits and inspections of our operations to make sure that not only are we abiding by our license requirements, but also that we're maintaining safety as our #1 priority at all time. And so even though it's sort of like a regulatory relationship we have with the CNSC, we do get a lot of value in their insights and their perspective on things at the station that we could be doing better, or areas that we can improve, or things that they've seen in other countries that are sort of world's best practices that we could take advantage of, to continue to improve the safety of our station. Next slide. Safeguards is very important. So it's kind of a dry topic, so I'll go through these slides kind of quickly, but it's very, very important for any nuclear station to make sure that the care of the fuel bundles is maintained from the time we order it and it's produced and shipped to us through the time that it's put into the reactor and used to make power, through the time that we take it out, put it in our spent fuel bay for 7 years, and then put it into our solid canister storage site, which is still at site. So the care of that fuel bundle from the start of life to the end of life is very important. And as you can imagine, the world has some pretty stringent requirements on that. In particular, the International Atomic Energy Association has very strict requirements for any nuclear station on how you maintain that oversight of the fuel. And we not only do we maintain and meet all of those federal and international requirements, we take a lot of pride in making sure that we have very good care of the fuel bundles at all times. Next slide. Thanks. So one of the I find interesting aspects, but a lot of people ask us about all of the radioactive waste and the fuel that we've used and where it all is. So this picture here is actually intended to give you sort of like a visual scale perspective of the used fuel and where it is right now. So in the sort of forefront of the larger picture is the actual Point-Lepreau generating station. This is looking north, I guess, from the bay. But where the end of that white arrow is and the blown up inset picture is actually where we store the fuel. So if you look in those concrete canisters, that's where we store all the radioactive waste that we have ever produced at the station. And an interesting fact that we like to use is that you'll see it in the quote there, that all of the used fuel from all the nuclear stations in Canada that have ever been produced will fit into 7 hockey rinks up to the boards. So, you know, a lot of people have concern about nuclear waste and what we're doing with it, but if you think about the actual volume of the waste that we've produced, it's quite small when you think that we've been operating for 40 years. Next slide. One of the very important and one of the aspects that we take pride in is our environmental stewardship. So, it goes without saying that every utility, every business these days needs to think about the environment around us and maintain high standards. But as a nuclear station, we really try to be the best that we can in the world with understanding our potential impacts on the environment and making sure that we're taking actions to mitigate any potential impacts. So, there's Canadian Standards Associations and regulatory requirements on what you do with the environment, but we really strive to go well above the federal and provincial requirements for environmental stewardship and make sure that we're doing our very best to take care of the environment around us. Now, one of the interesting facts that we like to promote, and which is why there's a picture here, this is a monarch butterfly. And the monarch butterfly is a delicate creature, as you can imagine. It has a migratory path that extends from Mexico up the northeast coast of North America, all the way past New Brunswick. And the monarch butterflies migrate up and down that pathway depending on the time of year. And along that pathway, they have certain areas where they'll stop and sort of repeat their life cycle. So there's certain stopping grounds along that way where they will stop, and the butterflies will feed for a little while, and then they'll have eggs, and then the eggs will turn into caterpillars. Those caterpillars will feed again, and then go through the transition into a butterfly, and then they'll carry on their migratory path again and repeat that life cycle at another stopping point. But there's only certain stopping points along that migratory route that are conducive to monarch butterflies repeating that life cycle, and one of them is actually right on the Point Lepreau site. So it's, we foster this relationship with them, and we, Jim Wilson, who's part of the Bird Observatory group, observes these every year, and they do some counting on how many monarch butterflies stop each year, and it's a very healthy, I guess, growth of butterflies each year. It's getting better. But we really look at it from a pride point of view that it's right next to a nuclear station. And it kind of gives us an example that if you think about our effects on the environment, we feel like we're doing a good job if the monarch butterfly, being such a delicate creature, can thrive in the same environment that we're producing nuclear power. Next slide, please. So First Nations engagement. So Paul, I'm not sure if Kathleen has joined the meeting. If she has, I'll turn it over, but I know when I started, I didn't see her name there. So do we have her online?
I had Kathleen online. So Kathleen, hi.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, Kathleen. I'll turn it over to you, Kathleen.
Thank you very much. Can you guys hear me?
I'm clear.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Paul. It's really an honor to be here with the municipality of St. Andrews, but also to tell you all about where we work. So my name is Kathleen Duguay. I'm the manager of community affairs here at Point Lepreau, and I'm responsible for the public information program, the First Nation engagement, and the community engagement. So one of the things that is really important to us and important to the community surrounding us is the openness and transparency of our information. So we meet regularly with our First Nation communities. We meet with the Wolastoqey, Mi'kmaq, and Passamaquoddy. We share information about our environmental program, stations operation, and any information that they're interested in to learn about. We also have partnered with environmental monitors from each of those communities, and they join us as part of our environmental program. Teach us a lot about the importance or the interest that they have in the environmental monitoring, but also what are the species on our site that is of First Nation interest. So they have identified to us a lot of the medicinal plants that is on our site, which are some of the plants that we were sampling already as part of our program. But we really had the opportunity to learn a lot more about other plants that we have on site. So we have added that to our environmental program. All our environmental compliance documents are posted on our website. And we certainly invite any one of you, if you are interested to know about our environmental program, we'll be happy to share that with you. And hopefully, if COVID can get out of the way a little bit, we could certainly bring you on site and show you where some of the sampling takes place. And some of the sampling takes place not just on site, but also all around the peninsula and also in your community. Next slide. So like I was saying earlier, our community is very important to us, and we meet with them on a regular basis. We invite them to come to see us, and when there's special initiative that's happening at the station, we reached out to them, asked for their feedback on some of the activities that we're about to do. And also there's a lot of knowledge in our communities about nature, about the Bay of Fundy. So we really consult a lot with our neighbors to make sure that the activities that we are about to take on doesn't interfere with their everyday livelihood, and also to make sure that we're doing it right. And it's an exchange of information. We both learn from each other, but we're very honored to have those relationships and to be so open and transparent. And we visit them on a regular basis. We have public information program that we host in surrounding communities. We have webinars that we host time to time. We'll be having more of those webinars with the new way that we do business now over the next few months as we're preparing for license renewal. But we don't need for those, we don't have to wait for those meetings of those activities to take place. If any one of you have any information that you would like to share with us about our station operations or any questions, please reach us at any time and we'll be happy to answer your question. Next slide. So the openness and transparency is part of our regulatory program and is part of our process. So we have a public disclosure protocol that we commit to communicating. For instance, when we have a shutdown coming up, when we have, when we complete our environmental monitoring results, we put that on our website. And there's many of those documents or information that we have out there that also, not only that we post on our website, but that we meet with certain communities or certain group who are interested in our business to really have the face-to-face conversation about it. And sometimes we're able to really put in context some of the results that we have and what does it really mean. So please reach out to us. We really enjoy meeting people around our communities and even around New Brunswick. And I certainly welcome you to come and learn about what we do, because we're equally interested to learn about what you do. So thank you. And next slide, I'll turn it over to you, Jason.
Jason, you're on mute in case you were talking.
Yeah, sorry, I had a little bit of tricky time there getting my my video back going and my mute button off there. My apologies. Okay, thanks for that, Kathleen. So this slide, you know, has a lot of numbers on it. I won't go through them all in you know, in detail, but I just will share a few highlights of why we're proud at Point Lepreau on what we do, you know, together with our communities. And 767 million, you know, is a lot of money when you think of sales and expenditures at Point Lepreau, right? 2,700 indirect and direct jobs. But you know, what I really want to focus on is the bottom sort of middle right, 4.2 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions that we're preventing from entering the environment by using nuclear at Point Lepreau, right? So these are just some of the facts that you know, we're proud of, and some of the facts that we believe we are a contributor to a better New Brunswick. Next slide, please. So this one has some small things in there that are a little bit hard to see, but a couple of facts we want to highlight here. We have 900 highly skilled employees that live in the province. 85% of what we spend our money on occurs within the province, right? And each of those areas there shows sort of a breakdown of that. But really the intent of what we're trying to convey here is we believe that we are part of the province, that we contribute to the province, and that the province is the reason why we're successful as a station, that it's all of us together that are operating the station and providing better value for our own lives. Next slide. Okay, so specific to license renewal, we're just going to cover a few facts here. on our license renewal, which is typically occurs every 5 years, but this year we have a bit of a different plan, which I'm going to explain a little bit. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, so this year, as I mentioned, we typically apply for a 5-year license. This year we applied for a 25-year license. So we're the first one in the industry to do that. Other nuclear stations have obtained a 10-year license, like OPG and Bruce Power. They've obtained a 10-year license, but there's nothing in the regulatory requirements that limits it to 10. And we believe both that the regulatory framework which we operate is a robust regulatory framework under federal government, but also that our own performance and our safety culture is very strong. And so we thought about those two facts together and believe that really a 25-year license, which will cover us to 2047, is the right time frame to ask for when it comes to license renewal. So that's what we did. We provided our application last June and specifically asked for a 25-year license. Next slide. So as I mentioned, two of the sort of key aspects is independent oversight and license oversight. And these are two areas where we believe that the regulator, which is the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, under their federal mandate, really provides an intrusive and insightful way of auditing and providing inspections of our own ongoing operations, so that at any time they understand exactly how our station's running, any particular concerns they may have, and the lines of communication are always open every day between the regulator and us. So we see that a 25-year license wouldn't diminish that oversight and the regulatory, I guess, enforcement actions that they could take if they ever had something of concern to go on, right? And that's why we believe that a 25-year license is the right thing to ask for us, and we're optimistic that we will be successful in that. Next slide. So just from a license renewal timeline, we filed our application in June of 2021, which took, to be honest, about a year to compile that application. The application consists of 14 safety and control areas, and in each area we need to go through in a very detailed fashion exactly how we run Point La Pro, what our commitment is to safety, our commitment is to the staff and the people, and our commitment to the public and the environment in each of those safety and control areas to run a safe station. So the first formal public hearing is coming up in 2 weeks, actually, from today, January 26th, which was supposed to be in Ottawa, but now it's online due to COVID. So we were sort of hoping we'd have COVID behind us and be able to be there in person. The second part of the formal hearings is in May 11th and 12th, which is supposed to be in St. John. I guess we'll hope that COVID is I guess subsided a little bit by that time, but it will be at least 2 days. And part two is more for the public involvement, where people get a little bit more airtime in front of the commission to express their concerns or express support for our operations. And it's an opportunity for us and the commission to maybe get into some of the more details of our operations. And then all that information from those hearings and from things that we've submitted all go to the commission, and then they will render their decision by June 30th. And typically we'll understand what that decision would be by early June, especially if there's any concerns they may have on the renewal. Next slide. So a few closing remarks and messages that we want to make sure come across in the way we conduct and the way we run our station, not through this presentation, but I mean in general, how we run our station, that we always make safety first. That's our number one priority to the public, to our employees, to the environment. And what goes along with that is the next few, that earning trust. We always try to be very transparent in the operations. We don't hold anything back. We don't try to communicate things in a way that's optically positive, but not necessarily have the facts. We always want to be straight with people and tell people exactly what we're doing, or exactly what challenges we have, and exactly why we're doing what we're doing. So that earning trust is very important to us. We talked about the environment, which is very important, and also includes First Nations communities. Clean energy, we're proud of. We do believe that we play a key role in helping the effects of climate change and bringing clean energy to the station. And the last one is really to reflect that we understand that as a nuclear station, we are nothing without the the strong social license and the support of the community and all of our public members, including all of us here tonight, right? We know we're nothing without the collaboration and support of everybody around us. Next slide. So the email there's Kathleen's and the phone number is Kathleen's if you have any questions at all, but now we could transition to maybe more of the less formal presentation, one-way communication, and be open to answer any questions or concerns you may have.
Thank you very much, Jason, for the presentation, and of course, Kathleen for joining us as well to add in a little bit around, in particular, First Nations consultation. So I guess just for council's information, more detailed, this is the third time that I've had the opportunity to see this presentation, and I think that's a very good thing, because that's 3 opportunities that I've had to have representatives from NB Power on the actual line to ask any questions or concerns I have. But we're going to be having a motion before us, obviously to support the renewal. And the purpose of tonight's meeting is to ask any questions or express any concerns you might have to representatives here, because if this motion just came out of nowhere, you'd be like, I have the slightest clue on what that looks like, what that means. So this is a wonderful opportunity. But I will, just to add on to the fact that it's my third presentation, is sometimes we see when things are brought to us the last minute and they want us to quickly send a letter of support on something that we really need to think about. I will say that NB Power has been doing this over months. So they started with the mayors, they went to the Regional Service Commission, and we have the option to do it at the council. So I think that to Jason, your entire team, obviously Bob is one of our representatives, kind of account manager. Thank you for being so open and transparent. I felt that throughout the process. So the other thing that's very obvious to a lot of council members is NB Power is a major employer in our community. There are a number of people that commute back and forth from this area, neighboring LSDs to NB Power. So we definitely know that it's an important employer in our area, just as well as it is in St. John and LaPro area, Musquash, all that area. It expands over the entire region, and I'm sure beyond. So I guess just to open up some questioning, I know that I've asked a bunch over the course of this, but I know that the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission is the one that kind of keeps the checks and balance, keeps the ongoing. Are they actually the ones that give the licensing, like approve the relicensing, or is that another body? And if so, is it something that they come in and do like an audit and say, all the safety measures are there, we're good to what does that specifically look like, and who does it? I know you touched on kind of what it looks like, but who actually issues the actual relicensing?
Okay, that's a good question. Yeah. So the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission, CNSC, we call them, have a part of them that are called the actual commission. So it would be equivalent to having NB Power in the board of directors, or any company in the board of directors, right? So they have the CNSC staff, which have all the different operating units. So they have the operations, licensing, security, safety. They have all the different operating units, all reporting up to a president. His name is Ramsey Jamal, vice president. But then the CNSC has what they call the commission, which is, like I said, similar to a board of directors of a company. And those are independent people that are not related and not involved in the day-to-day business, except for one person who is the actual president, Romina Velshi. So Romina is the only person that has a role in both camps. She's a president of CNSC, and she's a president of the commission. So the way the license renewal works is the CNSC staff, let's say, will put together an assessment of all of the different safety and control areas. They use this to standardize the way they evaluate a nuclear station. They have 14 safety and control areas. And under those areas, they'll do a full detailed assessment of our performance over the last 5 years, every inspection that they've done, every conversation we've had, any formal letter that we've submitted, and they'll do up a summary report, which they've already completed, which is a few hundred pages long. And in that summary report, they'll go through all those areas and say, are we doing the right things? Are we getting our license? Are we on par with the world's best? And they'll put that together in a recommendation report that goes to the commission. And then the commission is the one who actually gets to ask us the questions on part 1 and part 2. And they'll basically interrogate us on our operations, but they'll also interrogate the CNSC staff on why they made the recommendation they did, what their perspective is on our performance. So it's almost a little bit like court, where they're asking both sides for their perspective. And then it's actually the commission, still with the President Romina Velshi, but it's the commission that will issue the renewal or not.
That's I don't know if you're freezing or you're done. It was freezing up there. That actually answered it very well. So there is quite a rigorous process. It's not, we've seen sometimes, and I shouldn't be too specific, but sometimes when decisions need to be made, they're like, well, check with the municipalities and see what they say, see if they have opposition, but that's not the case here at all. Obviously, the engagement part is important in the process of getting it, but let's just say that there is people that are experts that are going to have already gone through this with basically in a very detailed report to make sure all the checks and balances very thorough. So I guess my next follow-up question, and I know somewhat of the answer, but I think it's good to not assume that all members of council are aware of this, but also that members of the public that might be watching this is in the case of an emergency, and it was a situation where there was risk or health concerns to the residents of St. Andrews and surrounding areas. What would that process look like of notifying the public of any concern? And I don't expect a detailed emergency operation plan to be presented, but I wonder just high level if you could maybe you're not the one, but just touch on that.
Yeah, sure, no problem. And am I coming across okay to everybody? Like, is my connection clear?
It's freezing every once in a while, but we've been able to pick up everything you've said so far.
Okay, I wonder if maybe I should turn my camera off. That might help. Let me just try that and see if that's. Is that any better when I speak? Is it clear?
So far, so good.
Okay. So you know, it'd be better if you could see my face, I guess, and my expressions and stuff. But let me try this and see if it works okay. So in the event of any emergency on site, we have you know, emergency preparedness department on site, and we have everybody that's trained and qualified, but we also have in the community a warden service where we have meetings through, and Kathleen manages this from a community point of view, but we have a warden service within the local area of people that we would reach out to in community in parallel without reaching out to the Canadian Nuclear Safety Commission to let them know that we're having a challenge. But what's really a strong part of New Brunswick that we, I guess, are fortunate to have is we don't have a community of 400,000 people in our local area, right? We have a community of a few thousand, and we have the New Brunswick Emergency Measures Organization, which we have a very strong partnership with. So if there's any event that would affect the public around us, our training and our protocols with the Warden Service and with the New Brunswick Emergency Measures Organization provides a very streamlined and very quick way of reaching out to our neighbors and discussing what's going on and implementing any actions that may be required.
Perfect, and that's our emergency system as well, Mr. Spear, correct? That would be our main way for the municipality.
Well, so actually going to follow up with that, if you don't mind, Your Worship, is
absolutely. That was my last question, so I'll pass it around now.
Okay, in a worst case scenario, Jason, is St. Andrews and we'll call the danger zone. You know, that if, I don't know what the worst case scenario would be, but if something happened catastrophic. And I guess the only reason I'm following up with that is, you know, I noticed you have partnerships with Musquash and St. John, but even though you have a partnership with EMO, I guess it would be good for the town staff and our fire department to know if there's an evacuation order, for instance, what the expectation is. And I've been around a long time and I don't ever remember having that discussion, to be honest.
No, that's right. So, you know, from a specific, I'll try not to bore you with the details, but for every nuclear station, there's certain planning zones that circumference the station, and each of those planning zones are a certain number of kilometers away from the station, and they reflect from all the industry studies that are being done how large of an area can you know, sort of a worst case scenario affect, right? And so you guys essentially are outside that zone, but with New Brunswick Emergency Measures, if we did need to evacuate, it's typically up to the 20-kilometer zone in the area that we would evacuate. and they would put up barriers on the highways to control that. But you guys are a little farther away than that from us. So from all of the sort of what we call design-based events that we plan for, the area that's impacted is smaller. I don't know if that really answers your question clearly or not, though.
Well, I guess it gives me assurance that the likelihood that St. Andrews would have to pull up stocks and get running out of town is probably minimal. But I guess it wouldn't hurt that maybe there'd be a tabletop exercise with Rhonda Hoolan, who I'm assuming you guys know from our area, who's the EMO coordinator for our zone, once a year or something,
Sure.
just to, involve the fire chiefs and CAOs so they can say, well, let's just assume whatever, the wind's blowing in the wrong direction. So St. Stephen and St. Andrews does have to make some adjustments. What will that look like? So we can at least have a discussion and a little bit to understand what would be expected, or at least who's taking responsibility. So we just have to help the residents get out of town, and somebody else will organize them where they got to go.
Yeah, that's an area that we'd be happy to follow up on. And we'll do that for sure. We predict and we look at all the events in the world, and we're always trying to mine every bit of data we can to make sure that we're making smart decisions and we're preparing for any eventuality, right? So we have a very systematic way, and I won't bore with the details, but there's a very systematic way of going through any potential thing that could happen, like a tsunami or a hurricane or a seismic event. We're prepared for that, right? And in all of those evaluations, that's what we use to kind of inform, how far do we need to prepare for in the province? What could something happen, right? So, but beyond that, we're always open to having discussions with anyone, whether it's an individual or a town, to say, okay, well, then if something did happen that nobody's ever thought of, then here's what we would do, or here's how, at least get that communication going. So I'd be more than happy to set something up for that, because the more engagement we can have and the more understanding of things that are credible and things that maybe aren't credible, the better off we're all going to be.
You good, Mr. Spear?
Well, I just have one, I guess a couple more questions, Your Worship, if you don't mind me.
Go ahead. We're going to go around the horn, so please continue.
Don't want to hog. So you've got those storage containers, with the spent material out along, just outside the plant. I guess what is, long term, those things probably have tens of thousands of years or something, or thousands of years. Well, they'll have to be handled, long after our great grandchildren are buried. So it's just a question of what is the long-term plans for those. And just, I'll ask you this next question so you can answer them. Succession is, what is the long-term plan for the plant? I know that's a bit of a political discussion, but could the nuclear generating station pretty much as is be renewed and refurbished in 2047? Or would they have to build a second reactor and kind of get rid of that one, or decommission the one that's currently there? Thank you.
Sure. I'm going to turn off, having some bandwidth issues. I got your first question. I'm just going to, if you don't mind bearing with me, I'm going to see if I can turn off the incoming, which was going to make it very difficult. But I'm just going to see if I can maybe make it, see if that's maybe any better. Anyways, can you hear me okay?
We can right now, yeah. Okay,
perfect. And you guys are coming in clear too. So I understand, Chris, the first question was around the concrete canisters that we use, and they must have, some sort of life to them, and what are we going to do at the end of that?
Correct.
And I think the second question you asked was around refurbishment of the Point Pro again. Was that? But I only caught a little bit of that.
At 2047, I know it's a political decision in the end of the day about if to spend the money, but will Point Pro need a low level or like an almost complete refurbishment in 2047?
Okay. Yep. So I'll elaborate on both those points. So the concrete canisters are designed, they're very robust concrete. They're very thick. They're designed to basically have an indefinite life to them. So we have enough room and enough storage space for our life until 2047, or whenever we decide to shut down or refurbish. The long-term plan from a Canadian point of view, however, is driven by the Nuclear Waste Management Organization, and they are acting under the Federal Nuclear Waste Act to look at the long-term storage for all nuclear stations in Canada. So they're looking at what's called the Deep Geological Repository site, which may be in Ontario. They're looking at a few different sites and haven't finalized it yet, but they're looking to have some sort of a longer-term storage solution, likely half a kilometer underground, ready in the next 30 years or so, that we could eventually transition to use fuel to. The low-level waste, which is things sometimes like rags and things like that, we have different disposal methods that we can do that safely, understanding what the radiological hazard might be for that. So there's other ways from a decommissioning plan that we can address the low-level waste, but the fuel itself, which is the primary, I guess, high radioactive waste, will be part of a Canadian-based solution under the Nuclear Waste Management Organization. And then if I could add a little bit of refurbishment. So refurbishment typically focuses on the things that are directly in or next to the reactor core. So our station, the government hasn't come up with a decision yet on refurbishment, but it is definitely feasible that at the end of our life, which was 25 to 30 years, it can be extended a little bit by analysis, but at the end of that life, it's feasible to make a decision on a business case to do another refurbishment or decommission. My own personal opinion is I think that another refurbishment would be great for the province. When I look at the state of the equipment of the station, it's really the fuel channels themselves that are directly in the reactor that sort of have a life-limiting aspect to them. The rest of the equipment that's outside of that, with a few exceptions, can be replaced and upgraded on an ongoing basis. So from a feasibility point of view, I'm not sure the numbers would justify, but from a feasibility point of view, another refurbishment is something that's that will be looked at by the government and is feasible, technically speaking.
We look forward in 2047 for you to lead that as well, Jason.
Love to.
Mr. Spear, do you have any more questions?
I'm good for now. Thank you, Worship.
Perfect. Mr. Knopper, any member of council, any questions from you? I see two. So Councillor Hurdle, go ahead first.
Thanks very much. And thank you for your presentation as well. I'm going to stand out here probably as the devil's advocate, and I apologize. And what I ask respectfully, and also with the awareness that, my point of view on this is not really going to change much, but we're seeing a global movement, along a lot of leading nations to phase out nuclear power since Fukushima. And if I'm not mistaken, we're looking at countries like, Germany, Belgium, Switzerland, Italy, Australia, are all moving to sort of decommission or ban outright nuclear power since that disaster. And if I'm hearing what you're asking for the public to go from a 5 to a 25-year license. In that context, it feels related, and it also feels a little bit inappropriate. And I'm wondering if you can respond to that.
Yeah, I'm going to turn my camera on for that one, because that's a real that's a good one you threw at me there. So if I get choppy, please let me know and I'll turn my camera off. Right? Okay, so it's an excellent question you have. There's a lot of I would say differences in opinions on what the world needs from an energy source point of view, right? And a lot of countries are, as you said, moving towards non-nuclear avenues around solar, wind, different types of generation. But if you look at North America and the expanse of what we have from an industry point of view, and if you look at the movement for electric vehicles being more and more, a primary vehicle for people in our house, it's really not financially feasible to rely on non-nuclear from a base foundation of our power supply. And so I don't want to get, I guess, too much into the details of things that I don't have the right facts to provide to you. But what I can share with you is that there's a number of studies that are being done in Canada to evaluate where we need to go from an energy point of view. And if you look at the next 10 to 20 to 30 years, particularly phasing carbon out and having tighter, net zero emission requirements that we're going to, it's almost impossible for us to get there without nuclear. And the reason being that solar, provides power when the sun's shining, and wind provides power when the wind's blowing. But nuclear provides power from a base point of view that's always there and always reliable. And those other sources, they're somewhat can be looked at as being cheaper, per megawatt. But there's a lot of manufacturing that goes into them, a lot of maintenance goes into those power supplies. And to really transition a grid off of sort of foundational generation like power plants, you need batteries and other ways of providing stability through the peaks and valleys of those power supplies. And that comes at quite an expense. And if you look at North America and the expanse of how much energy we use and how much production we have and the transition to electric cars, it's almost not feasible for us to do that without nuclear as a foundation. So what I'm expecting is that we'll see from the federal government, both Canada and the US, more clarity on how important nuclear is to that foundation of power, and more clarity on some of the goals that we'll need to meet from a nuclear generation point of view. And I anticipate that we'll see clear mandates on increasing the number of nuclear reactors we have in Canada and the US to support the anticipated demand on where we're going to be 20 years from now. Because we have a lot of coal and we have a lot of different generation sources. And so it's a little bit different than Europe. So I'm not sure if that really answered your question or not. I know I gave you sort of like a few hopes, and I think we'll see from the government. But what I'm certain of is in all of the studies that I've read and all the involvement I've had with Natural Resource Canada and other federal players, it's quite evident that nuclear needs to be the foundation of our power supply going forward, and that the other renewables will be supplementary and supportive to the sort of foundation.
Yeah, I know it's probably not super effective use of your time to try to prove me wrong, but I'm wondering if it's possible to circle back with some of those studies, if you can provide links or some information that way that I could take a look at. If
yeah,
possible.
okay. I'll tell you what I'll do is I think I can get you in touch with somebody that has a better story and more of the facts, and could provide some of those studies for you, so that it'll be more than just me providing you some information. I think I can get you in touch with somebody that would probably have a more meaningful conversation that would be explained a bit better.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
And Jason, can you hear me as well?
Yep.
I will take an action, sir, to do a follow-up with you as well, because you may want to have some of these representative meeting with you and providing you additional information in the studies that are being done. So I have connection with that as well that we work with. So those questions that you brought up are very important to us, because we get asked those questions often, and we have a whole bunch of information that we provide on that. So we just want to make sure that you benefit from the same material.
I would appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry, Deputy Mayor Akaji, the mayor is frozen right now. Just let me know. He has to reboot his computer. So can you chair the meeting until he returns?
Thank you, Mr. Spear. I believe, Mr. Heenan, does that answer your question, Mr. Hurdle, Councillor Hurdle? And we'll go to Councillor Heenan right now.
Well, first, Your Worship and Mr. Mayor, I wish to say a big thank you to both Jason and Kathleen for the wonderful presentation. Point Lepreau is very close to my heart, because I was one of the only people to ever climb into the reactor when it was being built, when I was there on a tour with Frank Sains. Probably that name does ring a bell.
That's awesome.
Anyway, does it?
Yeah.
Anyway, I had noticed in a couple of your presentations, and you did answer this question, that you said, well, it's our storage spot right now. So I assume that's meaning that it's right now for the time until the government happens to get the half a mile down or half a kilometer down in the ground in Ontario. So that answered one of my questions. The other one that I did have was, the other day when the cold snap began, we all received an email, or some of us did, about peaks in the electric grid. And my question is, as we become more and more reliant on electricity, like we were speaking about cars, we were speaking about, houses, this peak time is, as I said, it's the first time I ever got that. My question is Point Lepreau able to have more capacity if it's needed, or can it have more capacity than it is right now? Like to put power into the grid at the stalled times, or if Mac to Quack goes down or whatever, like, is it capable?
Well, theoretically, it's capable to ramp the reactor power up and down. So, we run the station based on 100% reactor power as our target. There's some operational challenges if you operate the station below 50%. It doesn't like to do that. But it really, a nuclear station is really designed to be either on or off. That's where it's happy. So we could theoretically run it at 90% if we need to, and sometimes we will if we're doing fueling activities or different station operations. We'll bring it to 90% or 95%. But it's not the same as a coal-fired plant or oil-fired, where it's really just turning the set point of where you want it to run. It's a lot more complicated because of the reactivity that happens. And when you're at 100% and then you reduce to 90%, there's a lot of things that happen in the core from a reactor physics point of view. So it's okay to do it, but it's not preferred from a nuclear station to run it at variable power levels. Now, some in Ontario, some of them do that. And like I said, it's okay to do it, but it's not the best for the power plant itself. So we run it at the maximum power that we can typically. So those peaks and valleys would not be conducive for a nuclear station to fill. There would be, we would be looking for other avenues to do that. And one is like you said in the message, they're trying to reduce the demand a little bit, right? So there is other ways, but nuclear is not the preferred way of managing the peaks and valleys in the power. Does that answer your question?
It does, sir, very much. As I say, it's just one of those things. I went through the technical stage where VoIP came in a large institution, and the system wasn't prepared for all of the power that it needed, thus gave it a problem. And I'm just worried we're going to turn everybody over to electric cars, and
right.
We're not going to be able to charge them. And I mean, I think that it's nice to know that Lepreau is able to work at full capacity, and other sources are required. So that's a great piece of information. And once again, thank you very much.
Sure, thank you. That was a good question.
Thank you, Councillor Heenan. Any other members of council or staff? I think I might have saw the Deputy Mayor's hand.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you, Jason, for your wonderful presentation tonight, along with Kathleen. I, like Mr. Spear, am concerned. I know you talk about distances, but we're only across the bay, which, as the crows fly, is a lot shorter than driving all the way around and saying we're not quite in your local area. We could be in your local area, and I like the idea that you are going to connect with our staff and our fire chief as well, and our EMO system here. That would be great to tap into. But I thank you for the information. I too have visited the site many times. I was a teacher, so I was there many times.
Nice.
Site. So thank you very much, and I look forward to what we hear from again. So thank you very much.
Well, I appreciate those comments.
But just
what I'd like to add as well is we conduct drill and exercise on a regular basis, and we'll commit to provide an overview to your team and also invite them to observe one of those drills and exercise, which will be very helpful. One of the things that we do too on a regular basis, and hopefully we can get back to this, is we do workshop on site when we invite all fire departments from all around New Brunswick, and they come and train at our facility. And it also builds a relationship around the communities around the province, and they get to train on an industrial area, which some of these firefighters around the province may not have the chance to do that. So it's all about building the knowledge and exchanging that knowledge. But we're quite excited that we're going to be able to talk to your team, and hopefully they can come and see some of the drill. So thank you for raising that, Mr. Spear. It's very important to us as well.
And I thank you for the First Nations community input, because I am First Nations, Pescatomakati. So I'm very honored that you have included them in your talks, and especially with the environment, because they're very
Yeah.
pro the land, as you know. Wolastoqey, that's what it means. They are from the river, and the Mi'kmaq from the land, and the Passamaquoddy as well from the land. Like, they're very concerned with Mother Earth. So thank you very much for including them.
It's a great
And I'm gonna-
opportunity for us to learn from each other.
One of the things I'd like to share with you as well is we do sampling of our plants, and we do sample sweetgrass from musquash. So with our First Nation folks, they suggested that we take some sample from the musquash and plant it on our site. And over the past few years, we have reached out to different subject matter experts around the First Nation communities that study plants, and they have identified that we have sweetgrass on site, a big patch of it. So we're going to be nurturing that, and we have invited various groups to come from the First Nation communities to come and pick up the sweetgrass, because for what I understand, you have to really treat it well so that it will grow more. So we're quite happy that we have that on our site, and we're offering that opportunity to First Nation first to come and pick the sweetgrass, because it's part of their medicine. So I wanted to share that with you, because I think it's very special.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate that. And it is medicine. It is also used in many ceremonies. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other questions? Just going to do a quick scan through here. I see Mr. Knopper's hand.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just one question, Jason. Reading in the last year that the federal government and provincial governments are looking at small nuclear reactors that could help subsidize the nuclear systems that we have in place. How is LaPro a part of that? And would the nuclear waste that is produced from LaPro be a part of that process, or have you guys had discussions on that?
Yeah, so that's a very interesting question. There's actually been a lot of work going on small modular reactors and the potential for the future. So for those of you who don't know much about them, they're not necessarily small. They're up to 300 megawatts typically. So that's like just under half of Point Pro. But they call them small modular reactors because they're built in a different way, right? And the goal would be that they would be deployable to different sites in a more convenient fashion than typical construction. But really, at the heart of them is a little bit of a different technology on how nuclear energy is made, and some improvements from a safety and operating point of view. That they're designed in such a way that you can sort of walk away from them for a few days, and they'll shut themselves down and in a safe manner, right? So there's some attractiveness to these new design technologies. But really, one of the benefits of small modular reactors is they're scalable in size between 300 megawatts and all the way down to like 1 or 2 megawatts. And what the vision is and what the goal is as this technology develops and as it's proven and some of these units are built, that you would be able to have these smaller units spread out through different parts of the province or different countries or different remote areas to provide power that is not necessarily relying on thousands of kilometers of transmission lines to get to, right? So you'd have less reliance on the bigger lines, more reliance on smaller power production throughout the province. That would make a more stable grid and have a better cost for everybody from a reliability point of view. So what Point Pro is hoping is that we've been working with a few different vendors, Moltex and Arc Energy, and our goal is to bring those designs to a vendor design review and acceptance process through the CNSC, and then actually build some of those units right on site. And that's what we're pushing for. It looks very optimistic at this time that the technology is good. The safety case is excellent, and the usability of this in sort of where the world is going from a grid point of view and an energy requirement point of view is an excellent opportunity. And then, Paul, you mentioned one thing that's interesting. You asked about the used fuel on site. One of these technologies can actually use the fuel that we consider used fuel. So it's after it's been in the reactor and has come out of the reactor, it can use this fuel in a reprocessed manner for new fuel for the small modular reactor. So there's an opportunity here for us to reuse the waste that we produce from a fuel point of view as new fuel for these new modular reactors. And so then that will complete the life cycle for another 30 to 40 years, right? So there's a real benefit. There's a lot of possibility, both from like I said, cost, safety, but also from an environmental point of view of reducing the waste that we've already produced with these new modular reactors.
Thank you, Mr. Knopper. Any follow-up? Are you good? Okay, anyone else? I think we've gone through everybody. I'm just doing one last check through. I'm on my phone as my computer continues to give me trouble tonight as well, first time, but just do one more look through. I think that's everybody. So thank you once again, Jason, Kathleen. I know Mary and Bob are also listening in. They've been great. It's been an open door policy. As far as a question for you, and I'll be leaning on Mr. Knopper as well, to kind of put either to put it to a vote on a letter of support. In all likelihood, that would be the first Monday of February. Would that work for timing for you, Jason, and your team? Is that not too late, or is that okay if we were to bring that forward at the next council meeting?
That's fine, because the deadline for the letter is March the 25th.
Perfect.
That's why we reach out to you guys way back, because we wanted you to have the opportunity to have the conversation with your team. And let us know. We will provide you with the information of who you need to address it and so on. So that comes from a CNSC process. So we'll make sure we provide that information once it becomes available.
Perfect. So what we'll do is the next regular council meeting, we will have this as a motion, and council will just weigh in and give me direction on which way to go. But I think this was a very important step in the process. For me, just to attend the presentation before, I don't think it would have had the benefit that tonight has had. And I know it's another presentation for you, Jason. I don't know how many you've done, but I can imagine it's more than I wish to know. No disrespect.
Oh, it's all, I like, honestly, not to patronize you at all, but every opportunity for us to present, what we're doing in the collaboration that we appreciate from the community around us and the province is a good opportunity. So it's time well spent.
Sounds good. And our other councillors that aren't on tonight, this is recorded, so they'll all be viewing it prior, and I think it'll provide a lot of information to help them in their decision-making process. So once again, just on behalf of the town, thank you for taking the time out of your evening to take us through that. Obviously it's a major asset and you could say resource, and there's no way around it. Issues like this are extremely important to St. Andrews, but they're at all of New Brunswick. And if it doesn't get recertified, I don't know what that process would look like anyway for the province, because I couldn't imagine what we would do as an alternative if that didn't happen. So don't take that lightly. So thanks again for your time. And we're going to switch now to motions and considerations. And council, this is the only thing that was on for tonight. Unless someone feels differently, I don't think there's much of a debate to have tonight. I think really it was a conversation with our presenters. And I think really the time where it comes to weigh in on conversation and debate would be at the regular meeting, not tonight, unless anyone has anything they'd like to add at this particular time. Just jumping over here since I'm on my phone. So I'm seeing a bunch of nods. Anything for you, Paul or Chris?
For you, your worship, I just want to ask Kathleen, you sent me an email. You had one last comment.
No, that was the one that I had the opportunity to do. I took the actions to follow up, and you and I can connect tomorrow, and I'll provide the information to you and you can circulate.
Thank you, Kathleen.
Thanks, Paul. All right, so we're going to move on to new business, which there's none. So question period. Paul, did anything come in throughout the meeting?
Your worship, I have not received any letters from the public.
I guess this is where we say goodbye, right?
Yep. Yeah, you're welcome to jump off now, unless you really like to stay for the rest of it for fun. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, your worship. Really appreciate it.
Thanks.
Appreciate your time, everyone.
My pleasure. Councilors, any comments? Seeing none. I just wanted to say thank you to staff and council. Obviously, we met on Monday night. This is the second meeting in the week, but really we had quorum. It was good to have that conversation. And I will say, I was thoroughly impressed, like I always am, of both staff and council's questions. I thought the quality of dialogue after that presentation was extremely well. I've actually, like I said, attended this presentation 3 times, and there were some great questions that weren't asked at the previous 2 presentations I saw. So kudos to all of you. And I like how there's a follow-up on St. Andrews to develop, I wouldn't say necessarily an action plan, but to get clarity around what was to happen if worst case scenario ever happened. I think that's very important as well. So thank you for joining us. There's no reason to go into closed session, so I'll be looking for a motion to adjourn. I only ever see Deputy Mayor's hand, but then I saw it seconded by Councillor Hurdle. All in favor of adjourning, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Just scrolling over, that's everybody. We are adjourned. Have a great night, everyone.
You too.